The FY26 defense budget cycle is done and dusted. Let's get started on FY27. We talked to HASC Chairman Mike Rogers about what to expect from next year's NDAA and the budget.
I think over the last couple of years, we've seen some improvement in terms of widening the defense industrial base, in terms of companies like Palantir, Anduril, SpaceX arriving on the scene. You see a flush of money from private investors in Silicon Valley. With that all in mind, what can Congress do to make the aperture even wider?
And that's our question to these folks, and we've already started bringing them in, asking them, what can we do to incentivize you to get into defense production? Taking the traditionals and non-traditionals, what can we do to incentivize you to grow? The primes, what can we do to incentivize you to expand? And I don't know what all the obstacles are going to be. I'm expecting some of them may be outside our jurisdiction. For example, tax policy. There may be something about our tax structure that disincentivizes expansion. If so, let us know so we can work with our counterparts on the Ways and Means Committee to address that.
I know that you've expressed a lot of optimism and support for the $1.5 trillion defense budget that the Trump administration has talked about. How do you think that is, how is that going to materialize in your opinion?
The idea for that amount originated with me and Roger Wicker. We went to the president in July of last year and pitched him on going to 1.5 trillion. And that number is not magic. That's 5% of GDP. That would get us to 5% of GDP in defense spending. And in looking at historical patterns, for us to stay in a healthy level of defense capability, we need to be spending 4 to 5% of our GDP on defense. And there's historical evidence to show that. We are right now under NATO calculations, and that's what we're talking about is NATO calculations, because President went to NATO and said everybody in NATO ought to be spending 5% of their GDP on defense. Well, we went to him and said, that means us, Mr. President, we're at 3.4% under NATO calculations. He said, listen, assuming we can go from what we spent this year, a little over $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion, that's the easy part. The hard part's going to be taking that money and turning it into goods and services in a quick time frame. But to answer your question, that was what we felt like we had to do to get to 5%, which we think is what gets us to a level of strength that will keep us out of conflicts. And that's the whole idea of peace through strength. We don't want to fight a war. We want to make sure nobody wants to take us on.
Does there need to be a second reconciliation bill or defense and a second reconciliation bill in order to make that happen, do you think?
Yes.
Yes? Are you talking with your colleagues in the House Republican Study Committee and the other committees that would be?
I've informed their leadership of that. We've informed our leadership of that. We would like to see, if you think back to 25, when we had the reconciliation package, we were spending $903 billion in base defense spending. We added $150 billion on top of that, so it took us to $1.05 trillion. The Defense Department decided to carry over 20 of that, so we're only spending $1.33 trillion this year. That's what we think the new baseline has to be, $1.33 trillion, and that's what we've recommended to the president. I mean, because the fact is, if you're telling the country and the world that we've got to dramatically raise defense spending, you can't cut the base, and you got to start with whatever we are as being the new base. So that's what we suggest the base will be. And then probably a reconciliation package of the difference, which would be $450 billion, something like that.
I mean, that's a pretty substantial jump from the 150 that was in this last one. How confident are you, and Senator Wicker as well, I know that he's been your partner in crime on this. How confident are you guys that you're going to be able to win over leadership to get that money put in?
Our leadership's not the problem. It's just the narrow margins, like everything else around here. When you've got narrow margins, everything is different. difficult, and that's just unfortunate, but that's the dynamic we're in. I have confidence that the president is going to be effective like he has been on his other initiatives, and I'm confident in our leadership.
This is part 1 of 2 of our interview with HASC Chairman Mike Rogers. For more information, come to breakingdefense.com.